3-0 win for Yo It's Flow puts him at a 5-1 match record in 6 rounds of Swiss here at DreamHack Montreal 2018. And our next series is going to be ZLSJS up against Hotmeowth. Hotmeowth, after winning the Summer Championships last year and representing at the World Championships, is a player that you probably remember. ZLSJS, however, I want to say this is his first DreamHack event. My partner, Dr. Jickaninky, knows a little bit more about him. You want to tell us a little bit about ZLSJ?
ZLSJS is a phenomenal player that a lot of players might not have heard of. I kind of, started talking to him after I played him on ladder a couple times. I saw that, he was going to the playoff venues and the playoff locations. I just kind of would talk to him in passing casually. Met him at one of the playoffs. And he is a very solid player, and he does very well in the ladder system. One of the issues he's having in the past is, he's a younger player. I believe he just either turned 18 or 19, something like that. And typically in the past, he didn't have the means to travel to these events, but I believe, Montreal was a little bit closer for him. So he actually got the, advantage of being able to come to this event and try and show his skills. And right now he's 4-1 in the Swiss, and he is, he is a player to be reckoned with.
That's actually very impressive. Hotmeowth 4-1 as well, has won 4 rounds in a row after losing his first round yesterday. So this is going to be a good matchup. Do these guys know much about each other, do you know?
Yeah, it's like, I'm really good friends with Hotmeowth. We're actually, playtest partners when we were preparing for tournaments. Actually, DreamHack Montreal last year, the one that Hotmeowth actually made top 4 at.
Yes.
We actually prepared the card-for-card exact lineup. We prepared the card-for-card exact lineup for DreamHack Denver. He is the person that I go to and say, hey, let's build a lineup. And we were talking about the lineup. I was kind of helping him out before this tournament to build the lineup as well. And I think his lineup is pretty solid overall, and I think he's obviously, just a very powerful player being on that Panda Global tag. He's got a name to represent, and he's just a good friend of mine.
He's a quieter player, but he's really come into his own since his Summer Championships, when he's changed so much for the better, and he's still an absolute grinder, putting in the time, putting in the work. He's got unmatched dedication, so it's really awesome to see him consistently doing well in DreamHack events. And we've got the picks and bans ready to go here, so let's see exactly what we're working with.
Yeah, I know from Hotmeowth's side that he was playing the lineup that I had kind of recommended to him, and it is going to be that Dead Man's Hand
you're
Warrior.
A caster now.
I know, right? I'm not allowed to.
By Jove.
I'm not allowed to have my input put to these competitive players. Like,
Once
what's
upon
wrong
a time,
with me?
you won a championship as well.
But Hotmeowth has that Dead Man's Hand Warrior. He's got that Even Warlock, and he's got that, I believe it is a Malagos Druid. I could be wrong on that one. It might be Token. And from ZLSJS's side, I wouldn't be surprised to see that either Mally or Token Druid. Some kind of odd control warrior, I would expect. And the Hunter, I'm not quite sure on. I would expect maybe a Death Rattle Hunter. ZLSJS is another one of those players that kind of goes by, the stats. He likes to kind of analyze what he thinks would be, one of the stronger lineups. But actually, now that I'm hearing, it's a Subject 9 Hunter, which I'd say is one of the sleeper picks for this tournament because of how well it can perform against Zulok.
So I do want to say, we saw the Subject 9 Hunter yesterday. It was Boar Control versus Zixo, and Boar Control was a player who actually originated that Subject 9 Hunter. He's had a lot of luck with it in the past, and he helped to develop that archetype. And we saw Boar Control play against Zixo. He won with the Subject 9 Hunter first. And I said something like, after Boar won, okay, well now Zixo has the opportunity to counter that Subject 9 Hunter. And Fino tweeted it and said Boar Control just started laughing. And Fino was like, why are you laughing? And Boar said, she made a funny joke. So I interpreted that to mean there are no really very good counters to this Subject 9 Hunter, or at least Boar Control is very, very confident in the deck.
That's a pretty bold statement.
That's a bold laugh.
I was a huge advocate of Spell Hunter when Barnes and Yasarj was a thing. I loved that deck because I almost always had Barnes at the opportune time. And it
I hated that deck
so much fun. One of my favorite decks to play, but right now you don't have that same power spike. You do not have that turn 4 win the game. You have that turn 4 maybe struggle a little bit, maybe play some secrets, juice up the Spellstone, try and get it to its maximum potential. I mean, Spellstone, however, is still a very powerful card.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There are some matchups where it can be a bit of a liability, however, so we're going to have to see, can ZLSJS get those favorable matchups for this Hunter deck? Are we going to see Boar Control put his money where his laughter is? Quick predictions, Jace. It's going to be Hotmeowth, or is it going to be ZLSJS?
You know, I have a obligation to support my fellow brethren, so I'm going to go ahead and vote for Hotmeowth. I can't not support Hotmeowth. You know, he's been there with me through good times, through bad times. We've worked on lineups together for years at this point. We still are working on lineups together, although I may not be out there playing on the field. I kind of like have to live my career through him now. I have to say, go Edwin, which Edwin's his name. I say, go Edwin, win this tournament in my honor.
Be my proxy, Edwin. I can't be two places at once. We don't have the technology yet. Yeah, clearly, no caster bias whatsoever. No, I also am going to give my vote to Hotmeowth. For kind of the same reason as the last matchup. I've seen Hotmeowth play. I know what to expect from him. I've not seen ZLSJS play before. But I am happy to be pleasantly surprised. So we'll have to find out, will ZLSJS take it and continue a great run in his first DreamHack event, or will it be Hotmeowth potentially making a run back to the top 4, or even better than he did in DreamHack Montreal last year? This is going to be a nice one to see. We get all those big names on stream, and that's great. Everybody loves to see their favorite players. We had Hunter Ace versus Orange at the end of last round, and it's phenomenal when that happens. But I do like to give an opportunity to some of the underdogs, to some of the players who don't have this chance every day of the week because maybe this is their first event or they just don't have the opportunity to travel full time. So it is a treat to get to see these players as well. ZLSJS going to queue up that Hunter deck first. And you can actually see him pitching away a Dire Mole on turn 1 against a Druid. And that's because a 1-mana 1/3 is not going to get you very far in this matchup. Bear Shark is one of the absolute best tools against Druid. If you can hit Bear Shark on turn 3 into Houndmaster on turn 4, then you're in a beautiful spot as the Hunter. And ZLSJS actually ultimately opts to go ahead and keep that Dire Mole, I guess figuring that there's nothing else that he could really want in the starting hand. And I get it, but still, I stand by the fact that Dire Mole's not going to be too useful unless you pick up that Crackling Razor Maw right there. So ultimately rewarded for holding on to the 1-drop.
Yeah, you really don't have any other 1-drops really in the deck. There may be that Seeker Keeper, that's about it. But, you know, without that Seeker follow-up, it doesn't really make much sense. So ZLSJS might be thinking, you know what, instead of taking this 1-drop or keeping this 1-drop, it might be more beneficial to either look for that Crackling Razor Maw in order to buff up the Bear Shark in the future turns, that Houndmaster in order to buff it up, or maybe just look for that Spellstone. But you see he does get rewarded for keeping it. I don't blame him for keeping it. He does have that powerful curve. However, I think Hotmeowth kind of hit a matchup that he was more so looking forward to. I think this is fairly decent overall for this Malygos Druid because, you know, it has the armor gain to sustain the hero power, and the only real issue for value-wise is that Deathstalker Rexar. But a lot of times you can just set up potential lethals with, you know, Twig of the World Tree in order to end this game. But ZLSJS does have that Bear Shark, and Bear Shark is notoriously pesky for beating Druids.
Very, very difficult to get rid of that Bear Shark, especially since Druid's not building a big board of its own in the early game. But just look at the direction this hand is headed for Hotmeowth. He is going to play that Nourish for mana. He can coin into Ultimate Infestation afterwards, or he can coin the Nourish and then go into Malfurion and the Pestilent. It is going to be a little bit awkward, whichever way he decides to do this. He's going to have to take turns off in the meantime. So it could be a little bit difficult for him to decide which path he actually wants to take with this. Based on how much pressure ZLSJS is putting on the board, I would expect to see the coin used next turn for either the Nourish or the Giggling Inventor.
Yeah, I definitely would not be surprised to see it be used on this Giggling Inventor. There needs to be some kind of answer for these Bear Sharks right now. Hotmeowth does not have currently any way of dealing with them. He could go for a line of play where he gains 12 armor now, kind of takes some hits, goes for the Nourish eventually. Could go for the Nourish now in hopes of trying to get the Malfurion down online as quickly as possible. There's a bunch of lines of play here, but there's only, you know, a couple that seem optimal to me. I wouldn't be surprised to see the coin Nourish into the Arcane Tyrant, into potentially a hero power, of course. Use your leftover mana, and then you will have that Malfurion on the following turn. You really want to contest these Bear Sharks somehow. If you don't contest them, they will run rampant or swim rampant, whatever Bear Sharks do, and end the game as soon as it started.
That's a good point. They have the body of a bear, but the head of a shark. So that raises the question, how do they breathe on land? Considering sharks need water continuously moving through their gills to actually oxygenate their bloodstream.
You know, I'm actually more concerned with, do they eat salmon or do they eat saltwater fish?
And then we have to, you know, get further into the question, what kind of shark is it? Looks like it could be a grizzly bear, but talking great white.
But does that mean that, you know, there are some other bear
knows,
shark
man?
breeds. Maybe there's like a mako grizzly shark. Did you ever think about that? I just thought about it now.
Dace, I think about this a lot.
I can't go to sleep at night because of this.
Far too often.
I like the hammerhead polar bear. It's my favorite.
Damn.
It's very, very fearsome.
All right, so Hotmeowth did coin out the Giggling Inventor here. Do you like the coin Giggling Inventor over the coin Nourish her mana?
I do.
And the Arcane Tyrant.
I think Hotmeowth has to go for the coin Giggling Inventor in order to try and set up some way to clear up these minions. Because if ZLSJS were to whiff that turn, not have the Houndmaster, he could have then went for the Branching Paths for attack. And if he goes for the Branching Paths for attack, he cleans up both the Bear Sharks, then he can Nourish, then he can Malfurion, then he can potentially live to that Ultimate Infestation that he needs to do so, especially because, you know, this Hunter deck doesn't play that many minions. To be honest, ZLSJS has probably played half of his minions already, and there's only 4 on the board.
Things are not looking good for Hotmeowth. And Druid is well positioned to beat almost every deck in the game right now. But this is probably the best start that ZLSJS could have gotten. The reason that you play this variant of Hunter over like a Death Rattle archetype is because you have that early pressure with Bear Shark, Crackling Razor Maw, Houndmaster, and you can take an early tempo advantage against some other mid-range decks, this deck in particular.
I think Hotmeowth had the intention of playing Branching Paths on the following turn in order to answer both Bear Sharks, like I was mentioning earlier. ZLSJS only would have had the option to kill off one of the Annoyatrons, allowing Hotmeowth to play the Branching Paths, double attack, clear up both the Bear Sharks, and hopefully, you know, ZLSJS would only have that Dire Maul on board, and Dire Maul isn't really that threatening, but unfortunately for Hotmeowth, he's going to be forced to go ahead and Nourish before I think he wants to. Doesn't get quite the opportune time to clear off these Bear Sharks. They are very, very pesky, and just that tag of not being able to be targeted makes them so powerful.
Hunter was just not in a good enough place for a very long time. Bear Shark has always been a good card, but not well positioned to actually see use in a tier 1 deck. But now that Hunter is actually finding a really good spot in the meta, we're seeing a couple different powerful archetypes evolve, and Bear Shark finally has the opportunity to give Hunter a little bit of an edge in certain matchups. Going back to our mid-range Hunter days, it's kind of fun to see.
It is. I really enjoy the, you know, the Hunter kind of game style of being very aggressive. And I like what ZLSJS does here. He goes for the Rat Trap, not necessarily because he expects Hotmeowth to play 3 cards next turn. It's more so for the idea that he doesn't want to play Snake Trap just in case Hotmeowth has, say, Spreading Plague. Because what Hotmeowth would be able to do is trade the Arcane Tyrant in, see that it is Snake Trap, play the Spreading Plague, and ZLSJS is back to square one with trying to push damage phase. With playing the Rat Trap, if there is some convoluted play where Hotmeowth has to dedicate multiple cards in the turn, like drawing with Branching Paths and Moonfiring some minions and just doing a fancy play, well then ZLSJS just automatically gets that 6/6 right back onto the board. And Explosive Trap really had no merit whatsoever that turn. There's no real reason to play it unless you're trying to save it for the Spellstone. But then again, ZLSJS isn't that worried about Spreading Plague right now. Spreading Plague comes out, you have that Mossy Horror, which kind of says no to that. And Mossy Horror is still going to be good against Malfurion.
Hotmeowth just trying to survive here. You can get Malfurion down, but not enough mana to hero power this turn as well. So Hotmeowth going to be at a fixed 16 life for the turn. Should be enough to get him through. But with Mossy Horror, there is 10 damage for ZLSJS in play. Or 9 damage, excuse me.
Yeah, but one of the issues with... Well, no, Mossy Horror will actually kill off his own Dire Maul. So it won't be that 9 damage, it'll just be that 7 damage with the Bear Shark and the weapon. And you kind of want to hold that weapon in order to make sure it's enabled through those secrets. So although Mossy Horror is a very powerful card in this matchup, being forced to use it here and only pushing 4 damage is not something you want to do. But if you're ZLSJS, you have to do it, especially with how much burst he has in hand. Even committing the weapon here.
I like it. Hotmeowth's not going to proc that secret, just commit the damage now, try to end the game with double kill command. It's been so difficult for Hotmeowth to clean up this Bear Shark. It's very unlikely he's going to have the life to kill it off this turn, and if it sticks, then you do have 2 active kill commands.
I like this from Hotmeowth. Just go ahead and, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and take the damage from the Bear Shark. That makes sure that the kill commands are not live, gaining as much armor as possible. Has that ultimate infestation for next turn. And Hotmeowth knows that there's a rat trap in this deck list, so he's going to be very conscious to play around it as much as possible.
Yep, that Branching Paths for Armor is the one card there that could keep Hotmeowth in this game. Still, ZLSJS just going to keep pushing, try to find those last points of damage. It's going to be really close now, though.
This one's going to be pretty close. I think it's going to come down to, can ZLSJS storm the weather with some kind of draw off the top? Can he, find that beast, push that damage? Can he find Deathstalker Rexar to try and end the game that way? And even though Hotmeowth, he's not quite in the clear yet, we'll need to find some more armor gain in some kind of fashion, whether it's the second ultimate infestation or I believe that second Branching Paths, as he has only used 1. He's going to need something soon. And this ultimate infestation, I think, is a really good start. I think Hotmeowth is just trying to figure out where he wants to put it. Does he want to put it into the Mossy Har in order to make it easier to kill, or does he want to go face with it to try and end this game quicker with some kind of combination of cards? I kind of like the face.
Well, this does give him the draws to potentially find that Malagos that he's playing. Obviously, this is a Malagos Druid, not a token Druid like we have been seeing primarily today. Trying to end the game with Twig of the World Tree, play Malagos, break the Twig, then you have the full 10 mana to burn. With that Crackling Razor Maw off the top, both kill commands are active, and that is just going to be exact lethal damage for ZLSJS on what was probably the last turn where he could find that lethal. A very well-timed beast off the top of the deck, and he is going to take that game. I thought for sure that Hotmeowth was bringing that one back.
I thought so as well. I think it needed to be the Crackling Razor Maw. I think the only other out in the deck at that point
Dire Maul
was the Dire Maul. I think that was just about it. If he did not find that there, Hotmeowth was just going to go ahead and Alex Straza himself back up if he chose to do so. And he had just a plethora of options of what he could do in the following turn. So unfortunate for Hotmeowth, he is going to take that loss. But I don't think he's too worried at this point. I think one of the benefits that Hotmeowth has right now is he has access to that Dead Man's Hand Warrior, which I think is another sleeper for, this tournament. When I was talking to Hotmeowth, we were evaluating whether or not we wanted, well, I keep saying we as if I'm competing in the tournament, but I talked to Hotmeowth, I said, what do you...
Well, he values your opinion.
Yeah, what do you want to, kind of go for? I told him I think Mally, or some kind of Druid, some kind of Warlock, and Quest Rogue are must-brings. I think Warrior is fairly strong, and he said that he's not even sure if the odd cost Warrior is even favored against Token Druid, and he did not want to lose to Token Druid. He wanted to make sure he had some kind of deck in order to beat that, so he said, what about Mech-Cthulhu Warrior? What about this? What about that? And we finally said, you know what? Dead Man's Hand Warrior. You win the odd control Warrior mirror, per se.
Yeah.
And you have game against a lot of the other decks.
I agree with him. I don't think that the Odd Control Warrior is favored enough against Token Druid. Even if you have 2 Whirlwinds in the deck, it can still be a little bit sketchy. And if you are trying to hard target that Token Druid, you might as well target it as much as you possibly can. So I agree with the strategy that Hotmeowth has gone with here. It's just really unfortunate that he lost that Druid so early, as that is a deck with some of the best sweep potential in the tournament.
Well, so though, Hotmeowth is going to need to win this game because Dead Man's Hand Warrior into this Hunter deck, although you would think that, it seems fairly strong for Hunter. Hunter has a lot of removal, and this the Dead Man's Hand Warrior has a lot of removal, and this Hunter deck doesn't really have the, surmounting pressure that really is needed to win that matchup. But there's one card in ZLSJS's deck that makes that matchup almost impossible, and that's Deathstalker Rexar.
Yep.
So Hotmeowth,
you cannot outvalue the Rexar.
You cannot outvalue Infinity. I've tried. It's impossible. You
go for the strategy of Dead Man's Hand, all of your removal, and try to keep removing the Build-A-Beasts, infinitely, but you just can't. Eventually they find a beast that heals, or a beast that stealths or charges or does really anything, and the Dead Man's Hand Warrior doesn't have tank up, so you just don't get there.
Hotmeowth does pick that very important card up, Mountain Giant. You know, it doesn't seem as if, you know, it does too much, but the thing is, the one thing that Even Warlock does very well is puts pressure on, and you really need some kind of pressure in order to win these matchups. I mean, sure, you might have that removal days upon days, but if you can't put anything on the board that just presents some kind of threat, you will lose the game at the end of the day. And having these Mountain Giants is very important for Hotmeowth right now.
This matchup is good for Hotmeowth if he has Hellfire in response to the Spellstone. And we can see that ZLS is going to have a fully powered up Spellstone for next turn, as well as the Freezing Trap online to disrupt this Mountain Giant. I mean, this is just a phenomenal start for him. And we know that Hotmeowth doesn't have the Hellfire in response yet.
Doesn't have the Hellfire quite yet, but what he does have is this very strong play with just taunting both of these up and saying, you know what, get through them. And right now, ZLSJS's deck does not have that great a way to deal with these 8/8s. And then on top of it, since ZLSJS does not have cards like Flanking Strike, he can't answer the Sun Fury Protector. And Hotmeowth can just bounce the Sun Fury Protector back, push both of these Giants face, and end the game that way.
One of the biggest counterplays against Hunter Secrets, just don't attack. Don't find out what they
Why
have.
not?
Don't put yourself at risk to being punished by the secrets. And it's really frustrating for the Hunter player. They're like, all right, I put these tools up. Come on, give this to me, right? Like, I did this. Now you need to do your thing, attack my face, and let me have this. And if you just don't let them have it, they can't do much.
And that's where sometimes stats are skewed, because a lot of, you know, when you're playing on ladder, you're not quite thinking, oh, I need to play around this secret, I need to play around this secret, I need to do this and that and this and that. And you just kind of play into things and lose the game because of it. Whereas in tournament play, you are constantly thinking about, all right, these are the secrets in his deck. These are what I need to play around. How can I play around it most effectively?
You also don't have definitive information of the deck list on ladder. In this tournament in particular, all deck lists are open for the entirety of the tournament. So prior to the match, the players had a chance to check out their opponent's deck lists, see exactly what they're working with. The secret suites can be a little bit different depending on, you know, the player. Do you want one Snake Trap? Do you want 2 Wandering Monsters? Or do you want, you know, 2 Explosive Traps, 2 Venom Strike? It's just different. You want to be aware of what they've got.
It's actually crazy to think a lot of these players have been putting Wandering Monster down to 1. They only run 1 Wandering Monster because it's not as impactful as it used to be. Right now, you know, Hotmeowth, I think, is playing this very well, understands, you know, this matchup. I think with Hotmeowth, you know, he could have pushed a lot of damage face there, but he risks the potential for ZLSJS to have some kind of swing turn. And in this matchup, you are pretty safe as long as you don't take too much damage. Because Rexxar may be a bit annoying, but Rexxar doesn't deal with your board states most of the time. It just kind of makes some, you know, crazy size minion.
It definitely can. It takes specific beasts for that to happen. So it's more likely that Hotmeowth's consistent pressure and removal strategy from here on out will win him the game, especially since he's not down to that 12 health range specifically, which is double kill command. Actually, now it's 10 because Deathstalker Rexxar is in play, so 10 health for double kill command with the beast active. He's far and away ahead of that.
One thing I will say, though, is Hotmeowth had pushed those Giants face. It might have turned out a little bit different. You know, that's 16 damage that he missed on that one turn. And in that case, ZLSJS would be down to 9 health, and this would be a much different game. However, of course, it would have panned out much differently. There could have been more, you know, more optimal plays for ZLSJS to do. But it's always a question of what if. That is one of the biggest questions players need to ask themselves in Hearthstone is, what if I had to push that damage?
You constantly need to be asking yourself, if I do this, then what? What's the worst thing that could happen to me? What's the biggest punish from my opponent? And eventually you get down to the play that has the best chance of winning you the game and the least opportunity for them to counter it. It's difficult to work through all of those scenarios in the limited amount of time that you have, but the best players in the game are the ones who have experienced these scenarios so many times that they're able to eliminate all of the possibilities as quickly as possible.
Burning Gen Greymane there was really good for Hotmeowth. There's a lot of burns that, you know, could have gone a little sketchy for him. I was really worried about Gul'dan. Gul'dan, I think, is one of the most powerful cards in this matchup. Just gives you that refill on top of, allows you to upgrade that hero power into something that is much better in this matchup, especially because, you know, they can't really deal with it too much. So we can see here, you know, he's just kind of taking a very passive approach going for that silence onto the Cobra. A little curious as if there was some consideration for the Mossy Horror, because, you know, Mossy Horror I don't feel like gets as much value as maybe it should in this matchup, especially when you could have just cleared off the Emperor Cobra and gotten rid of that beast tag.
Usually by turn 6, the threats that have 2 or less attack have been played already. Mossy Horror is not going to be too useful. You're certainly looking at that as a counter to other aggro decks. Hunter is kind of the exception here. This is a mid-rangier style of deck.
Always Huffer, Cora.
Never Misha.
Always Huffer. Is ZLS going to be able to push just a little bit of damage because that Mossy Horror wasn't played? It could have just been a case of Mossy Horror alongside that Sunfury Protector. I could be missing something here that I'm not quite thinking of. But as you can see now here, you know, Mossy Horror is just probably going to be stuck in the hand for quite some time. Hotmeowth has a fairly strong play in the form of this Twilight Drake, Hooked Reaver, and can even commit that banana onto that Sunfury Protector to trade up into the infamous Bear Shark.
Oh, it's definitely banana time.
It's my favorite, is when the bananas get played, you just call that play bananas. Or, you know, it's an appealing play.
That one was better.
Yeah, the appealing play gets them, because everyone expects the banana. No one expects the appealing.
I mean, when you harp on it as much as you just did, we might remember it now.
Did you notice that the reason I said appealing was because you peel a banana? Did you know that, Cora? Because it's like a banana peel.
It's your birthday, so I'm gonna let you have this.
Thank you, I needed something.
Chat doesn't like it when we don't talk about the game. So I'm gonna need to bring it back around here. Just bring it back around. ZLSJS setting up lethal next turn with the kill command in hand. If he's able to get a cheap enough beast off of Build-A-Beast, which he very likely is, and assuming that Hotmeowth does not have heal, but we do see with that Spellstone in hand, the Vulgar Homunculus as well, Hotmeowth can play that, essentially bump up the Spellstone to 5 life gain and neutralize the damage taken from the Vulgar Homunculus. Hotmeowth's going to go to 8. And ZLSJS is going to have opportunities to close out the game still. If Build-A-Beast can find Life Drinker with something else cheap, like Snow Flipper Penguin, say, ZLSJS will just still have lethal this turn.
Life Drinker.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, he's like 1 mana short, even with the coin still in hand. He needed something cheaper as that second beast.
You could go for Vilebrood, and you go for that because you can coin it out, play out the Life Drinker, and then rush into the Vulgar Homunculus and push the Eaglehorn Bow face. I wouldn't be surprised to see that because there is still access to that coin. Will be a 9 mana play. Can go ahead and do this, and you see ZLSJS go for that. And I think this is the most optimal play because you get in that damage and then you kind of guarantee that kill command will put in a lot of work. Hotmeowth right here needs Gul'dan.
Oh my gosh, that was so close. That's not gonna do it. And he can't tap, and he is dead if he plays anything else with just a kill command in hand. So ZLSJS is going to take this game. Edwin's looking really rough now. I don't know how Hotmeowth brings this one back with just the Warrior. You were saying before, if he has to go into Control Warrior, Dead Man's Hand Control Warrior specifically, into this Hunter deck, it is almost an impossible matchup to win, assuming Deathstalker Rexar is like, you know, your 1st through 25th card in your deck.
I think Hotmeowth has to hope that Dead Man's Hand is going to be one of the bottom cards. He really has to, or I'm sorry, not Dead Man's Hand. Deathstalker Rexar, because Dead Man's Hand really can't do much in that matchup. I mean, it clears the board efficiently.
That's why I was thinking he wants Dead Man's Hand to be one of the last cards in his deck too, because he doesn't want it.
No,
he doesn't ever want to draw that card.
It's a pretty dead card in the matchup.
Best tools for Hotmeowth, I'm assuming he is playing Dr. Boom Mad Genius. I'm assuming he is playing Omega Assembly. Get them together. Great things can happen. But it's going to be very conditional. It's going to come down to the Dr. Boom hero powers that you get, and if Deathstalker Rexar is one of the final cards in the deck for ZLSJS, it's looking very likely that ZLSJS is just going to be able to sweep with this one up with a 3-0 victory off of that Subject 9 Secret Hunter, and it's looking to me like Board Control's Laughter was
just about
warranted.
to say, maybe Board Control's Laughter was warranted. Maybe
this deck doesn't have
maybe
solid
they're
counters.
onto something that not a lot of these players on the floor are onto, because I wasn't predicting Subject 9 Hunter to get brought as much as it was, but when I got here and I started talking to a lot of the players before the event, I was like, oh, so what'd you submit? How are you feeling? What's feeling good? A lot of people were like, Subject 9 Hunter. And I went, you know what? That doesn't sound half bad. I wish I would have thought of that.
I definitely like this Hunter better than Death Rattle Hunter. It's just, it's difficult to make the right meta call. You can, you know, prepare as much as possible. You can test matchups, you can test lineups, and you're still not going to have exact information about what the field is going to bring. It's not a guarantee. But this Hunter deck does seem like it has reasonable matchups across the board, and was able to just take two matchups where it looked like Hotmeowth should have at least a 50% chance, if not better, to win that game. ZLSJS very well could just run away with this one. And you said this is his first DreamHack event, I believe?
I believe this is one of his first, you know, in-person tour stops. He's gone to the playoff events at my venue in the Cave in Virginia. I've met him there. I met him up in Boston when there was a venue there. I believe this is his first tournament in which he is playing live on site. He's done a lot of the open qualifiers. I believe he's done well in those as well. Wouldn't be surprised if he, you know, made top 16 in one of those as well. I'm not quite sure off the top of my head.
He's a great player, just not a player who has a ton of in-person experience. So to be at a 4-1 record in this tournament, potentially going up to a 5-1 record, making a phenomenal case for that top 16 run. Things are looking very good for ZLSJS. Hotmeowth, his path to victory in this game, unfortunately relies a lot on ZLSJS not finding what he needs.
Yeah, you even saw ZLSJS there just understood. He said, you know what? I don't need any of these cards. There's a Bear Shark, which infamously would be fairly strong against Warrior. Warrior doesn't have quite the great ways to deal with it. But
Fiery
he even mulliganed.
We mourn your loss.
Yes, he even mulliganed that away and said, the only card that matters is Deathstalker Rexar.
He's right.
You even see him holding on to the tracking here. Now, the reason he's holding on to the tracking is because ZLSJS feels as if he doesn't even need to play this card, because he is that favored in the matchup that when he finds Deathstalker Rexar, the only way he'll lose is if Hotmeowth takes this to fatigue. And if he plays the tracking, that puts him too further into fatigue. It looks like ZLSJS is just playing around that on turn 1.
That then raises the question for me, if he wants the tracking to find Rexar, but he doesn't want to tracking because he doesn't want to lose in fatigue, then when's the right time to play tracking?
Never. I mean,
fair enough.
Do you even ever have to play it? It's one of the questions. You can just kind of let it sit there. It's not a card you need to cast, especially when you're playing Deathstalker Rexar. You're going to build a beast, have a very limited hand, and just play that beast turn after turn after turn. You don't really ever need to cast that card. And we can see there, it looks like he's going to be holding on to it, and I wouldn't be surprised if he holds on to it for the entirety of this game.
One of the new cards from the Boomsday project, the Weapons project, which looked initially to be a very powerful card for the Warrior class, unfortunately isn't seeing a ton of play right now, but in this style of Warrior deck, it makes a lot of sense. It's a weapon disruptor for your opponent. If you're playing against a Tempo Mage, you can destroy Alineth, you can destroy Twig of the World Tree. Gives each player a 2/3 weapon and 6 armor, but obviously the armor is much more likely to be beneficial for the Warrior player.
Yeah, I really like Weapons Project. I think what's putting Weapons Project down is not the fact that it's not a powerful card. I think we can all agree that it is one of the most powerful cards, I think, that came out of the Boomsday for the Warrior class. I think the major issue with it is that the odd cost hero power that Baku provides is so strong that you can't really warrant playing a weaker card just to make your deck weaker overall.
Yeah.
Or one strong card.
Yes, I like
to
making my deck weaker overall.
You know what I meant, Cora.
Great fun.
You play one stronger card to make the overall deck weaker.
Yes.
It's almost reminiscent of Subject 9. Deck might be weaker overall, but when you play that Subject 9, it seems powerful.
I mean, ZLSJS certainly would have benefited quite a bit from having the Bear Shark early on. Again, you know, it's a fine minion. Best when used against Druid, and the reason we're seeing it being played so much is because Druid is so popular. It's pretty much strictly a response to that, but it's got a decent spot against Warrior too. And obviously with Houndmaster, then the card just becomes very difficult to deal with.
Hotmeowth needs to be careful here. If Hotmeowth takes too much damage in these early stages, it's really going to make it difficult for him, because ZLSJS can potentially win through Hotmeowth not having, you know, enough armor gain. It isn't that odd cost Warrior where you tank up and you're safe for a while. You only gain 2 armor from this, which just matches ZLSJS's hero power.
It's 50% worse than the upgraded hero power.
Or the upgraded hero power is just
100% better.
And ZLSJS has that Deathstalker Rexar in hand. It's already looking very grim for Hotmeowth here, and the game only just started. And it's going to go on for quite some time.
Going to play it on curve. As long as ZLS never plays that tracking and never plays that Subject 9, he's going to have more than enough time to get these built beasts online to keep the pressure going, and Hotmeowth will not be able to keep the removal up.
He needs this Dr. Boom to essentially compensate for what he's going to be lacking, and that's in that removal. He's going to need Dr. Boom to either get that 7 armor or find that Discover Mech that then rushes into that beast over and over and over again. Because ZLSJS, I wouldn't be surprised if he just goes ahead and snap plays the Rexar here, starts looking for what he needs to. That is how he wins this matchup. And again, he's on that plan of not taking himself to fatigue. I wouldn't be surprised if this Subject 9 never gets played.
Oh, absolutely not.
You already saw him hold on to the tracking. It would only make sense that he just holds on to the Subject 9 as well.
Quick thing, Weapons Project, also very good when used with Harrison Jones. This Warrior deck wants to draw very quickly. You're going to see Acolyte of Pain in it, I'm pretty sure, as well. Try to find all the removal pieces, eventually Deadmans them back in. That wins you the control matchup. It's a pretty flexible deck. I actually like it a lot right now, but in a Hunter meta, it looks a lot worse. It's a shame that Hotmeowth got this matchup, because I would have liked to see this Warrior deck get a chance to shine. It's a deck that takes a long time to play. It may not be the most popular deck for that reason, but I think it has a lot of good matchups right now.
And that was a very solid beast that ZLSJS just created. ZLSJS just created the Snow Flipper Penguin plus the Stampeding Kodo. It just allowed him to get through that minion with ease, and right now, you know, Hotmeowth doesn't have much going on for him. He could just shield slam that, but I think he wants to fit in some hero powers. I believe with this Town Crier, he will draw the... Drawing a blank on the name, Cora, and you're so much better at names than I am. The 3/3 with Rush.
Rabid Worgen.
Rabid Worgen. I believe it'll only draw that, or potentially a Darius Crowley if he is running that in the list as well. We're going to find out here. I wouldn't be surprised if he potentially just goes and plays it here. There's also Militia Commander. I completely forgot about that one. That one's been making some slight appearances recently, just because, you know, it is a very powerful tool. It is a very strong minion. It's almost like...
I mean, it's a phenomenal counter to...
It's like a Scale Worm.
Yeah, it's a great counter to Violet Teacher on curve, especially if this deck is trying to prey upon Token Druid, but we're seeing a lot of the Token Druids stray away from Violet Teacher off of Oaken Summons and more towards that Sarnite Chain Gang version of the deck.
So this is going to be a long, grueling set for both of these players. And Hotmeowth is going to be trying to take it to fatigue.
He's behind on resources,
but
he's behind on life.
Barely behind on resources and life right now.
Weapons Project Harrison can give him a couple more cards.
I think honestly he's going to have to go for it, because ZLSJS is very adamant on what he's not going to play. He's not going to play that Eaglehorn Bow until he sees the Harrison, because there's no reason to give Hotmeowth cards. And he's also not going to play any cards that draw him cards. He is just going to play that beast turn after turn when he makes it. So Hotmeowth's win condition at this point is to create some kind of board state that is too overwhelming for ZLSJS to deal with and push damage after damage after damage. And he's starting to, but it's going to be a long uphill process.
Tundra Rhino is...
Tundra Rhino Jungle Panther.
pretty much the best beast you can get.
Can't play it quite yet, though.
That's fine.
Still
He's got plenty
beast.
more that he can do.
The great thing about the stealth Tundra Rhino is you just let it sit there.
Oh, yeah.
You play it, you let it sit there, you build a beast, you charge it in. You build a Bitter Tide Hydra on the next turn with Wind Fury, and you charge it in.
Then Hotmeowth plays 5 Warpaths. Doesn't matter, because ZLSJS has 40 health. We have a good laugh about it. We move on.
And then we go to our backup game.
The backup game.
The backup.
Both these sets have been pretty quick.
There is that Mega Assembly, though. A Mega Assembly is a very powerful card. It's one of those cards that's kind of a sleeper. It's very versatile in the fact that in value matchups, you can hold it for the later game. And then against more aggressive matchups, you can kind of pick and choose what you want to take from it. You can say, all right, I need to play this on turn 1 to invest into maybe a Dynomatic later on.
Mm-hmm. Ooh.
Mechathune.
Brilliant Nullifier actually is interesting.
Unfortunately for Hotmeowth, Mechathune is pretty impossible to pull off.
Oh, yeah, it's not going to happen. Dead Man's Hand would need to be the last card that he plays. Actually...
No, he could technically play the he would need 1 Dead Man's Hand in the hand, and then he would need... it's very weird.
He would need to have the Mechathune on the board, play the Dead Man's as the last card in his hand or in his deck.
Well, there's 2 Dead Mans. What you would have to do...
then it's just not possible.
Well, what you would have to do is you'd have to Dead Man's Hand this hand and not shuffle another Dead Man's Hand in, and then go through the extra cards.
Yeah, we're going to turn time before that happens.
This is too much work to pull off the Mechathune. And then you would have to shuffle the Mechathune into the deck and then play 2 Mechathunes. Yeah, that we're living in a fantasy world there.
I mean, Mechathune's a 10-10. That's pretty good. Play it, hope that it hits face. Beryllium Nullifier, just as an untargetable minion, is quite good as well. So as far as Omega Assemblies go, that was a good one.
And to be honest, this actually isn't half bad a hand to shuffle back in. If you look at it right now,
I don't want 2 Mechathunes.
You have, you know, a large minion. You've got draw, you've got removal, and you've got mass removal. I'm not sure if you quite want to commit to it now, because I think it's a little ambitious, but it's definitely something to consider.
Well, I mean, important to note, these mechs have rush. So Mechathune is not just 10 mana, 10-10, do nothing. It's 10 mana, 10-10, kill something. It's Ice Howl. So shuffling that back in makes it a much better top deck than normally it would be.
And we all love Ice Howl.
Yeah, we played so much Ice Howl.
I'm definitely an Ice Howl.
Best card in the game. But look, we work with what we've got here, Jace. He didn't initially have this Mechathune. Things were looking grim, but now with all of these cards in hand, it's actually looking like he might be able to take this one the distance. And that little glimmer of hope is very dangerous, because it means that Hotmeowth is going to play this out for the duration. And this game's going to go on for quite a while longer, because his win condition is still win and fatigue.
Nothing changes that. Mechathune is pretty powerful, though. Like you were saying, that mech does have rush because Dr. Boom is live and active. And just having a 10-10 that can value trade into something, while also staying on the board in order to clean something else up, or maybe just push 10 damage on the following turn, is pretty powerful overall.
Nice
Never thought I'd
Mossy
see the
Horror.
day that Mossy Horror got value in this matchup. That was
Crazier
some decent
things
value.
have happened.
Ooh, Hotmeowth does find an answer for that stealth Rhino right now. It's actually pretty important. If you get rid of the Rhino, it kind of forces ZLSJS to take another turn where he is forced to build that very similar beast in order to stealth it and hide it again. And this 3-8's really annoying for ZLSJS to deal with. I mean, maybe it's just a story of the Beryllium
Nullifier.
I see I was close on that one. I'm getting better. The Beryllium Nullifier just pushes 3 damage a turn until ZLSJS is dead.
You want to know something ironic?
Does Raptors have charge?
No.
Okay, what's ironic?
Beryllium Nullifier is magnetic in the game. You can magnetize it onto minions. Beryllium as a
I think I know where you're going with this.
Is not magnetic. You can't put one past Reddit.
My childhood is ruined. My childhood
Yeah, my childhood too was heavily centered around beryllium as a metal.
Mine was. I worked in the beryllium mines as a child. Don't even know if that's a thing, but I made it up. And being
can't cop to making it up
battle.
Immediately after saying it.
Oh, I didn't make it up. I worked in the beryllium mines as a child.
Confidence, Jay. Fool them.
Confidence is key.
And I think the reason that Hotmeowth went with this line is because of how difficult it is for the Beryllium Nullifier to be removed. If he goes with the Warpath and kills off the Tundra Rhino, then the Beryllium can be killed. He doesn't want to sacrifice this Beryllium Nullifier just yet, but you also feel so bad leaving Tundra Rhino stealthed on the board. So I probably would have favored the Warpath. You have to sacrifice your Nullifier, but think about all of the removal that you're preventing from ZLSJS. It's more likely that your other minions are going to stick when your opponent can't just charge all of their beasts into them.
And you know the scariest part about this matchup that a lot of players, it kind of slips their mind when they're playing it because, of course, Warrior has to play to fatigue. ZLSJS at any point could just build Echoing Mastiff plus Raptor Hatchling. And he also, the turn before, could build Corpse Widow with something else. And what happens is that Raptor Hatchling will become 1 mana, or 0 mana depending on how many Corpse Widow minions you have on the board. And then you play them over and over and over and trade into minions and shuffle a bunch of 4/3s back into your deck.
Man, that is such a niche scenario.
I've seen that before. It's a niche scenario, but the issue is this game goes long enough that scenario is highly possible.
There's only so many beasts in the game. You're bound to find Corpse Widow and
especially if you're building one every
Hatchling.
turn.
I had something similar happen with Augmented Elec. It wasn't nearly as fun. Looks like Hotmeowth is going to finally rip this Dead Man's Hand. He's shuffling another Dead Man's Hand and a whole host of phenomenal removal into his deck. This was a really nice hand to shuffle in, as well as, again, that Mechathune, which does have Rush. It's really not looking out of the realm of possibility for Hotmeowth to still win this one. And
I mean, what if this comes down to time?
It's entirely on the backbone of having Dr. Boom so early. But this is looking a lot closer than I thought it would. Especially with Rexar being played on curve.
Sometimes it happens, you can still build powerful beasts, but what'll happen a lot of the times is if Hotmeowth can just assemble that kind of combination of cards where he clears up board after board after board, he can just get there in the end. And like I said, ZLSJS has to play each one of these beasts. He can't really play those other awkward cards, but ZLSJS still probably has about 10 cards left in his deck, at least.
Yeah, he hasn't played any draw cards. Both trackings in hand, Subject 9 still in hand.
I think Hotmeowth just hovered over it, but he hovered over it so quickly that I kind of missed it. Still a lot to be played this game.
Oh, man.
Here comes the Mechathune.
Kill the Bear Shark. Lifesteal means nothing. ZLSJS hasn't taken any damage this game.
Exactly. Mechathune is just an Ice Howl. A very fancy Ice Howl.
We have some updates from the matches happening in the rest of the tournament. Pheno, Orange, and Level 9001 have won their matches. They are all 6-0 in the tournament. Level 9001, I hope we get to see him on stream because that's a name that I have never, ever seen before.
I never have either, but Cora, I would like to mention that it's over 9,000.
I think that's probably the point.
It is one over 9,000.
Clever.
Impressive.
Damn, smart guy.
I would really hate to have grinded all those ranks. Maybe that's why he's undefeated right now. It's because he had to get through 9,000 other levels just to be where he's at. That's impressive, Cora.
You get down that low in Legend, you just queue up another server.
He's playing on every server at this point.
Look at all of these built beasts in hand for ZLSJS. 2 vicious fledgling combos, that scavenging hyena. Just building beasts every turn, trying to find the optimal time to play them. Hotmeowth can clean up this board with a Warpath.
I think Hotmeowth was hoping that that Mechathune would go off. Just end the game right there.
Come on, Bug, let's go.
Come on, Mechathune, one time.
Broken game, please.
Don't recognize the hand state, the deck size. Don't recognize any of that. Just end this game. There's the rat trap. Could actually execute if he chooses to do so. But to be honest, I think if you're Hotmeowth in this spot, you might just cast it and hero power it.
Oh, yeah. Run in the
But
blade.
It's rough to say. You could just hero power it, run in the blade, but you take the 6 damage. I'm not quite sure if Hotmeowth can afford to take that damage. But you do waste prime removal, whereas you didn't utilize the hero power that turn. I would have liked to seen more consideration for that.
That hero power is another prime piece of removal, and you need to recognize that. You're not guaranteed any one of these Dr. Boom hero powers every turn, you're just guaranteed that it is going to change every turn. So I can definitely understand that Hotmeowth wants to preserve his armor because he doesn't know when he's going to get the armor up hero power again. But also, he's got so much health right now that I think he could have been a little bit more liberal with his life total.
There comes one of the scariest vicious fledglings in the world, the infamous Stranglethorn fledgling. They're pretty scary. They're indigenous to the Spell Hunter deck. You ever seen one in the wild, Cora?
Thankfully, no.
I figured as a songbird that you may have, run into a couple of them.
Different territory.
I would hope so. I wouldn't want to run into that
If I
thing.
ever ran into a vicious fledgling in a back alley, I'd walk the other way.
I think I would.
I'm not looking for that.
I think I would go straight to a hospital and see what was wrong with me.
Not a fan. ZLSJS, however.
It's one of those prime
fan.
beasts to build. It's one of the best because it does have that access to getting something like Wind Fury that ZLSJS picks up right there. And that is 16 damage, and if he can find stealth, he could have just hit it again.
16 more damage.
Can you imagine just that pink menacing bird coming out of the shadows, smacking you with its wings twice, and then going back into the shadows?
Chase, I worry about what you dream about.
I dream of that right there.
I worry about you sometimes.
There's another one.
Oh.
They come in flocks.
Yeah.
They're like geese.
It's a bird thing, Jace. They're evil.
Not all birds are evil. Just these. These are really evil.
No brawl for Hotmeowth, and he is staring down minimum 24 damage on the board with the weapon still active, and that other fledgling can just get Wind Fury as well. So, gotta start playing the clear game.
To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised maybe see one of these. It's really awkward, but you could just play a Militia Commander just to put it onto the board. I'm not sure how beneficial that is, but I will say no. I think you need to hold those Militia Commanders. Now that I'm looking at it, they are in and of themselves a form of removal.
Yeah,
they're not
absolutely.
the strongest form of removal. They don't get through stealth. They don't do things like that. But at the end of the day, he could just put 2 Militia Commanders into this Vicious Fledgling, or he could put 2 1/1s and a Militia Commander and call it a day. ZLSJS just keeps building beast after beast. What can Hotmeowth do at this point?
Well, he's still at 30. He's going to be able to...
He was at, what, like 50-something, 60-something earlier on?
Yeah, he took a lot of damage the last couple of turns. But even after those fledgling hits, still at a relatively comfortable life total. Can gain 7 more from the hero power this turn. And remember, he's got the Dead Man's Hand. If at any point he wants to shuffle additional removal into his deck, he can. But likely, because he shuffled Dead Man's Hand with Dead Man's Hand earlier, he's going to want to continue doing that, if at all possible, and guarantee that he can win the fatigue. race, but the difficult thing is he does not have the card draw necessary right now to draw back into the removal that he shuffled.
Oh, and it's just so awkward with the stealthed hyena. He would love to just clean up these minions, but it makes the hyena just stronger. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he has to play the shield block and hopefully find Brawl. Execute's going to be strong later on, but right now that is not what he wanted to see. And he has to kill this Vicious Fledgling. I think the hero power is more beneficial than playing the Dry Whiskerer. But that's a tough call to make.
Move the biggest threats on board.
And he traded all of his minions in so that ZLSJS could not trade in the snakes in order to buff up his Scavenging Hyena. So, good spot on Hotmeowth for recognizing that he needed to do that. Or this I want to say Vicious Fledgling because that's the most powerful thing on the board, but the Scavenging Hyena could have been really bad for Hotmeowth, and it still is quite bad.
Oh man, this is...
ZLSJS is just relentless.
I wonder if it's just
beasts.
Finally reaching the breaking point for Hotmeowth.
And a Timberwolf.
He's been just barely hanging on this entire time.
I'm trying to think of what can be picked up. I mean, there's still Brawl in the deck. There is still that possibility, but right now Hotmeowth is at 13 life.
He had something like 50 life just 2 or 3 turns ago, and this game has shifted so quickly, but this is ultimately how we figured this game would go. ZLSJS with Deathstalker Rexar is massively favored. Hotmeowth made things interesting with the early Dr. Boom, a really nice Omega assembly, but it's just not going to be enough. This Hunter deck looks so strong.
It's pretty absurd right now how strong it is looking. Could go for the Shield Slam, then can go ahead and use his face to clear up that Timberwolf, then could value trade with the Militia Commander into the Life Drinker. I wonder if Hotmeowth has had this weapon up so long that he's just forgetting about it.
Yeah,
okay, obviously he didn't forget about it, but I mean, that weapon has been there for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, the last turn, obviously, you don't want to kill the snakes because you don't want to buff up the hyena. Okay, still at 23, 7 armor again next turn. We have the Security Rover now with Rush. Can get some additional taunts off of that.
Scavenging Hyena. I think Bittertide Hydra was the pick. Bloodworm and Bittertide Hydra.
Oh my gosh. That means every time it takes damage.
This is ridiculous.
Every time it takes damage and ZLSJS takes damage, he will then heal the damage off of the lifesteal. The interaction between lifesteal and Bittertide Hydra is really weird.
It is, because lifesteal just says whenever you deal damage, Hydra will deal damage to yourself, but then in return it heals you. I will say though that, you know, Hotmeowth does have a decent play. Can't go for the Security Rover. Bump into the zombies that it's the unicorn zombie.
The Courser.
What is it called?
Something Courser? Shimmering Courser, I think.
Can buff into the Shimmering Courser, then put the taunt minion into this Scavenging Hyena, use one of these executes and hero power. And Edwin, Hotmeowth is actually, you know, starting to gain a little bit of life and actually trying to stabilize. Trying, it was the key word.
Every time we're like, oh no, it's not that bad.
He's back to 23, he was at 13 earlier.
It really is that bad.
It's looking kind of bad, I'm not gonna lie, but
still like six or 8 cards for ZLSJS. Didn't get an exact look at it. As long as this game's been, we're still not close to fatigue for either of these players. I mean, Hotmeowth has the execute. This Hydra's going down.
He doesn't need to execute. He could put the Mechathune in and save the execute for later on.
I think you.
Because the one thing with the Mechathune is it's one of the most awkward cards to play from your hand.
Yeah, but there is a chance that you Mechathune remove and get to keep Mechathune on board. I suppose it's more likely that ZLSJS is going to play multiple minions per turn going forward. Although if Hotmeowth has been tracking, he knows that there are actually no other zombies in hand for ZLS.
Honestly, from this point, I think what Hotmeowth is deciding right now is whether he can dump his entire hand, play the dead man's hand somehow, and then get through both Mech Cthuns to win this game. I think Hotmeowth is thinking about that right now. I think he said, you know, that's a little bit too optimistic and unrealistic. But it's something to consider. The only issue is going to come to the point where if the last 3 cards in your deck are Mech Cthulhu Dead Man's Hand.
I think that's just going to take so long.
It's going to take too long. I don't think he has the time to do that.
The Mech Cthulhu needs to be on the board when you finally play the last Dead Man's Hand, and then there needs to be minions on board to run it into to kill it off, and also Hotmeowth needs to just not be dead at that point. Mech Cthulhu as a 10-10 is fine. Mech Cthulhu as a death rattle that wins Hotmeowth the game, I don't think is going to happen.
It's a difficult call to make, though. I mean, it's something that may have been a consideration for Hotmeowth. Maybe he should have taken into consideration it earlier when he played the Dead Man's Hand, or maybe he should have played that earlier, or maybe he should have, saved on. There are very small micro decisions that could have decided this game for Hotmeowth, and there might have been a percentage where he wins this game through Mech Cthulhu. That's something to look back on.
This is a much more difficult matchup for Hotmeowth to navigate than ZLSJS. ZLSJS sure needs to pick the correct beast every turn, needs to account for the removal that Hotmeowth has and not put too much onto the board at any one time to play into that removal. But Hotmeowth, there are just so many unknowns in this matchup for him. What beasts is ZLSJS going to get? How am I going to respond to it? He has to think about so many things at one time. But he's still drawing into that removal that he shuffled in with Dead Man's Hand like 10 turns ago.
I mean, at this point, the only thing he's going to be able to draw is Militia Commander, Execute, Warpath, and Brawl when he finds the other Dead Man's Hand. And he's still got an okay life total.
Importantly, he's hit the 7 armor hero power like 6 times. Like, this could be going back and forth between like Kaboom and the 3 little mechs, but it keeps alternating back and forth with armor, which has really kept him in this. And
this is actually kind of a whiff from ZLSJS. He picked up that Arthas, but the second take is pretty weak overall. I mean, the most stats it can put on is just 4 attack. I mean, obviously this Bear Shark begs to differ right now, but that's still pretty weak overall of a beast for the next turn.
Now the Bear Sharks are sneaky too.
There's that Acolyte of Pain. Finally drew those. I completely forgot that was in the deck because I think it's the first one we've seen. I think both of them have been in the bottom.
Yeah,
portion
those
of the
are
deck.
Very necessary for the Warrior. I would not honestly be surprised if Hotmeowth chose to Acolyte and Warpath this turn.
I wouldn't be surprised either. The only issue is you would need to rely on drawing that other... The biggest issue with that play that I think Hotmeowth is considering is if he goes for that play, he will no longer have Warpath to enable executes in the future.
Then, there's one more thing he could do. 50-50 win this brawl.
Then you don't have a brawl in your deck with this Dead Man's Hand.
Yeah.
There are so many convoluted problems with this. I mean, there is a potential.
Nothing is good.
He's going to go for it. ZLSJS wins the brawl. Hotmeowth just is forced to hero power.
That is likely going to be the game. Even with that very risky play from Hotmeowth, that wasn't a game-winning play. That was a, if I do this and win this, maybe I don't lose yet, and maybe I can pull it back from here. Wind Fury, that's 18 damage, 21 with the weapon hit. Kill command in hand, and this game is over. ZLSJS is going to win this series 3-0, a sweep with that Spell Hunter. He is going up to a 5-1 record.
That's very impressive. I mean, I don't expect any less from ZLSJS. I know it's not really a player that you at home may have heard of, but he's a very strong player, and he is known for, just having those performances on ladder, just making it to the playoffs time after time, not necessarily being able to travel as much, but he's here. He's showing that he is a force to be reckoned with, and unfortunately for my practice partner, Hotmeowth, it's sad to see him lose. But, I've still got faith. I've still got faith in Hotmeowth. I know, being 4-2 at this point is not going to discourage him. I think he's just going to go out and win the next 3, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see both these players back in the top 16.
Certainly the pressure's on Hotmeowth now. He needs to win out from here to get a guaranteed spot in the top 16, and he lost in the first round, so his tiebreakers are going to be pretty bad. If he goes 6-3, he should be able to make top 32, but that will not make the cut for top 16 for him. So definitely he understands what he has to do. He can do it. We saw him make top 4 last year at this event, DreamHack Montreal 2017. And he very well can do it again. But ZLSJS, a player that we have not gotten to see all that much on the big stage, under the limelight, performing very well. His lineup looks strong. His Hunter deck certainly looks very strong. But that's still not going to be it for this round. During the middle of that game, we got word that Plants versus Monsanto was in game number 2. And this was our second match that we'd already seen on stream for this round. So whatever they're playing must be taking a long time. And we are actually going to be getting into game number 3 of that. I believe Plants is up 2-0 over Monsanto. Something about Warriors in there, I am sure. Exactly what the matchups were, we're going to have to find out for you. But we are going to be getting into that one. That has to be brutal for the players, Jay.
There's nothing like just sitting there and playing a Control Warrior mirror. It's just something about Dr. Boom wants to take up all the limelight and be on the center stage for too long. But it's, you know, you have to be prepared for it. This is a meta where Warrior is a very popular class, a very popular deck, whether it be Dead Man's Hand or Odd Control Warrior. And those matchups, you know, will take 40 to 50 minutes. You have to be prepared as a tournament player to accept that matchup and be able to conquer it.
Benefits and drawbacks for bringing Warrior in your lineup. It's very powerful, very strong anti-aggro, but you are in for some lengthy matchups if you do choose to bring it. We are going to get those players set up, and we'll be getting into Plants versus Monsanto, game number 3, right after this.